Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of the Athenianos Show. Of course, I'm Athenianos. Today I just want to do something quick because last February I traveled to Latvia for a reporting trip and I wrote an article that just was published today in New Eastern Europe that I was very proud of and I wanted to share with you guys. So you can find it by going to Google and typing in New Eastern Europe. It's the magazine inside a new Cold War brewing in an Eastern European capital. And so I'm just going to sit here and read you guys the article, and you can listen or search it up on your own and follow. So here it is. Inside a new Cold War brewing in an Eastern European capital, how decades of geopolitical conflict between Latvia and Russia have resulted in an internal crisis for the young Russian-speaking minority in Riga. Twice while off his shift in a hospital, Vladislavs was reprimanded by other doctors for speaking Russian with another coworker. He was told that speaking Russian was not appropriate. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. That's why I'm not feeling accepted so much in Latvia, said Vladislavs, who's a doctor in training in Riga. He did not want his surname revealed out of fear that he would lose access to jobs and opportunities in the medical field if his identity were revealed. Interviews with Vladislavs and several other Riga residents revealed that tensions have escalated between the Russian-speaking and non-Russian-speaking populations in Latvia. According to a 2023 survey by the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung Foundation, 37% of Russian speakers in Latvia said that the attitude of Latvian speakers toward them had significantly worsened since the war. This was an increase from 17% in 2022. In Latvia, around a third of residents speak Latvian as their native language, and in the capital, Riga, about half of the population is Russian-speaking. The prevalence of Russian speakers reminds many Latvians of the period under Soviet occupation, in which a period of intense Russification took place that resulted in the suppression of the Latvian language and identity by the authorities. It's too fresh. It's too fresh in our history, said Irma Kalnina, a Latvian member of parliament, about the period of Soviet occupation. Since Latvia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Kalnina has believed that the threat of Moscow trying to occupy Latvia again has become much more real. The Latvian parliament has imposed more severe measures to curb the use of the Russian language within Latvia since the start of Russia's war with Ukraine. For example, in 2022, they closed all Russian schools and around the same time banned Russian news channels. It's like a cold civil war, said Vladislavs. Vladislavs said the Russian government funds the hospital where he works and requires everyone to speak Latvian during work. However, the fact that he was reprimanded during a private conversation was a step too far for him. Pavel, another aspiring doctor in Riga, who has both Latvian and Russian roots, says that although some language laws were implemented before the Ukraine war, the crackdown on language has gotten, quote, a lot worse since the start of the Russian invasion. For the longest time, the menus had like Latvian, Russian, and English, and after the war started, the Russian language started being phased out and removed from the menus, said Pavel. Pavel also asked that his last name Pavel also asked that his last name not be used given the rising tensions between the two groups. He fears that it would prevent him from finding work in Latvian hospitals. However, for Steven Zenis, 25, the crackdown on the Russian language started well before 2022. Zenis said his ancestors originally came to Latvia from Poland. However, his family is Russian-speaking, which highlights the complex relationship between language and identity in Latvia. The State Language Center, also colloquially known as the Language Police, seeks to curb the use of the Russian language by enforcing Latvia's official language law. Zenis said that some of his acquaintances have been stopped and forced to take a Latvian language test while speaking Russian to another customer in a shop. Although he has not been stopped by the language police, Zenis explained that he frequently worries about what language he speaks to others out of fear of being stopped by the language police. It's a major inconvenience, and it's extra stress for me. Why do I need this? Zeni said. Despite disagreeing with the policy and extra resources the government has spent to curb the use of the Russian language, Stephen says that he has not personally felt any animosity directed at him from non-Russian speaking Latvians. The problem is the government. Of course, we have good Russian speakers and good Latvian speakers, and we have bad Russian speakers and bad Latvian speakers, but I personally have not encountered such a situation where another person said something mean to me for speaking Russian, and neither have my friends, said Zenis. Despite disagreeing with these language laws, Zenis said Latvia is the only place he wants to live, and it is the only place that feels like home to him. In Latvia, I feel really good. The last 5 years I was abroad, and I didn't enjoy it. But 6 months ago, I came back to Latvia and have been really enjoying it. I love this country because it's my birth country. I have friends, family, and I feel really comfortable, said Zenis. Zenis even started paying for extra language classes to improve his Latvian so that he can feel more comfortable speaking the language with native speakers. He said he wishes that the Russian language school that he attended offered better Latvian language lessons. He supported recent measures to fully integrate Latvian-speaking kids with Russian-speaking kids in schools. However, he also thinks Latvians would benefit from learning Russian as well. I think it would be really nice if there were half Russian-speaking, half Latvian-speaking students in a school, so that the Latvian speakers speak better Russian, and the Russian speakers will speak Latvian better. Zeni said, for me, I want to speak Russian with Russians, Latvian with Latvians, and English with English speakers. On the other hand, Vlada, 21, said she feels a strong connection to Latvia, but at the same time retains her connection to Russia, where her ancestors are from. She did not want her surname to be made public out of fears that it would negatively affect her ability to find a job or apply for a master's program in Latvia. If there is a war between Russia and Latvia, I don't know for which side I will feel empathy, Vlada said. I think it would be a great tragedy for all Russian-speaking people in Latvia. Vlada, who is an undergraduate student, said that she plans to move abroad and ultimately leave Latvia, primarily because of the worsening economic situation in the country. Many people choose to move abroad to get a higher education or a larger salary. We have small salaries, but all products are becoming more and more expensive without salaries increasing. Like Zenis, Vlada believes that most of the tensions between the Russian-speaking and Latvian-speaking populations are due to the government trying to foment divisions between the two groups in order to hide their inability to address the country's economic situation. I think the government doesn't care about either group of people, but I think they try to divide our society into two sides to make Russians hate Latvians and Latvians hate Russians. Like Caesar said, when you divide society, it's easier to manipulate the people. Pavel referenced the same phrase as Vlada when describing the Latvian government strategy. It's like a basic divide and conquer strategy. So you keep the population culturally divided, and then people will vote for you. And then people will vote for those who promise to get rid of Russians, and then you can do whatever you want. From my point of view, that's exactly what has been happening since independence in 1991. Pavel said that the government's divisive tone has not yet led him to experience any direct discrimination for being a member of the Russian-speaking population. However, like Vladislav's, he feels that tensions are growing between the two groups. You can feel the smell of racism in the air, Pavel said. However, like Vlada, Pavel still cited economic concerns as the primary reason he is thinking about emigrating from Latvia. Basically, this country is kind of a shithole, said Pavel, referring to Latvia's economy. Outside the center of Riga, in a northwest suburb called Boldera, the economic struggles facing many Riga residents were more apparent. The neighborhood was filled with run-down factories, neglected Soviet-era apartment blocks, and shops that looked like they had not changed since the Soviet Union. A young couple living in Boldera, Dominic and Olga, described how the poverty in the neighborhood has bled into the societal life there as well. Most of the people here are in a lower social strata, said Olga. Dominique added that there was not much work in Boldera, and people had to travel long distances to find it. We feel forgotten, said Dominic. There are a lot of people who feel frustrated and turn to drinking and seek conflict with others. In addition to being one of the poorest parts of Riga, Boldera is predominantly Russian. Prior to living in Boldera, Dominique lived in Ogra, a city east of Riga, where he said that the quality of life was much better. He believes that a key factor in the difference was the demographics, with Ogra being predominantly Latvian and Boldera being predominantly Russian. Life was better in Ogra because the city is well maintained, because after all, a majority of Latvians live there, and they're kind of investing more money there. And in areas like Boldera, they don't invest much, said Dominique. Olga believes that the anti-Russian sentiment in Latvia had been present for a long time, but had now taken a slightly different appearance. To be honest, I don't see much difference. It used to be more veiled. Now it's more radical. It just boldly manifests itself, said Olga. In addition to closing Russian-speaking schools and news channels, the anti-Russian sentiment has also led some of the population, including Vladislavs, to believe that they do not belong or are not wanted in the country. Sometimes when you go to a company and they don't actually really accept you, and if they behave differently towards you, of course you at some point might at least consider going to another group of people. I think the same applies to countries. If you don't feel accepted very much, then of course you are going to try to find another, said Vladislavs. So that was the article. That was 12 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. These were really fascinating people with really interesting insights that I met, and their opinion is really valuable, and it's a topic that is not being reported a ton, but one that's really valuable to share. So again, if you want to find the article, go to Google and type in New Eastern Europe, and you can find it. It'll also be linked in the bio. Thank you guys so much for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.